Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Overcoming Graduation with Brian Drury. Now today my guest is a man who went from being a 39-year-old bartender, writing screenplays and doing freelance writing trying to make it in Hollywood, to becoming a sex expert and spending the last 20 years of his life teaching people on how to have better sex, better love, connection, intimacy, and to have overall stronger relationships when it comes to their spouses or partners in their life. So Alex is going to be talking about some of the biggest misconceptions that both men and women have when it comes to dating and sex. We're also going to discuss, does size matter? Alex's number one tip to have better sex in his life. The main reason why many perfectly healthy young men are having trouble getting it up, keeping it up, and reaching completion in the bedroom. Alex is also going to discuss how he went to write his first book in 30 days, and that went on to become his best-selling novel, Revolutionary Sex, which launched him into this new career, this new industry, and was the groundwork and the framework for his new career in life. So these are all things that I think are critically important to people and that are so interesting, but people are terrified to talk about. Now, what I promised to you guys when I started this was I was going to be the one to ask the questions we're afraid to ask and discuss the things we're afraid to talk about so that we can open up that door and open up that communication channel, because all of a sudden when we start to talk about it, we realize it's okay. It's okay to be curious and interested and want to know about all these different things in the world. Now, you're also going to get my first ever affiliate links as a piece of today's interview. Now, I'm really excited about this, and the products that Alex has have helped change so many people's lives, so I know that you're going to get tremendous value by clicking on these affiliate links. Now, the first one you're going to get is Revolutionary Sex for Men, and it's the 3 things you can do to a woman to give her the best orgasms of her life. So men out there, I know that's going to be one that that perks your interest and makes you want to listen up. You're also going to get a link to the Passionate Lover, Passionate Life course, which is the ultimate guide to sex, love, deep relationships, and a fully lived life. And then finally, for any guy out there that is feeling insecure about the size of his manhood, about the size of his package, you need to click on Alex's Unleash the Beast program, which is the very last affiliate link. This is one that Alex explains in the interview is a game changer for any man that is insecure about the size of his package and is insecure about the size of his thing down there. And I'm trying to say it as I laugh because I'm trying to say it as tastefully as possible. Now, I will also say before I get started, this interview is very graphic. It is filled with bad language and very graphic conversation. And also, I will be divulging and sharing a lot of very personal things about sex, about my personal life. So for family and friends, especially family, maybe not the interview to listen to. But if you're curious, it's out there, so go ahead. But for everyone else listening, this interview is jam-packed with amazing insights about life, about how to find your passion in your career and the things you want to do with your life, how to strike out and find your own out there, but also amazing insights about how to drastically change your life in terms of sex, connection, love, relationships. So guys, thank you so much for listening today, and it is my pleasure to introduce you all to Alex Allman. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Overcoming Graduation with Brian Drury. I am extremely excited to have my guest on today because we're going to be talking and digging deeply into a topic I have wanted to talk about since kicking off this podcast, and that is sex. Yes, sex. We're going to dive in that uncomfortable, wonderful, beautiful topic that we're not supposed to talk about, but that's part of what this show is about, guys. Let's talk about the things we all want to be talking about, but we're afraid to. So today, my guest is Alex Allman, and he is the author of the best-selling book, Revolutionary Sex. He has a YouTube channel with 23,000 subscribers that these videos have received over 11 million views, all talking about sex, connection, emotional connection, actual sexual procedures and activities. And he also has a TED Talk, which was fantastic, by the way, and I'll be posting that in the show notes for this interview, that received over 184,000 views. So his programs focus on enhancing sexual pleasure, creating deeper intimacy and communication, and deepening sexual confidence. So Alex, thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thanks, Brad. I appreciate it. It's great to be here. I just, as you were doing that fantastic introduction, which I deeply appreciate. Something kind of popped up, and I feel like I have to, fess up.
Absolutely.
The TED Talk, the first 25,000 views on that I purchased. I went on one of those like little websites where they have like guys in India who view them, because I wanted to give it some momentum and look cool.
Okay.
But I just said, so whatever that number is, you got to really reduce it by 25,000. I felt this pang of like, I cheated.
Well, I appreciate the honesty, but still getting, somewhere around a ballpark of 150,000 views is pretty incredible. So, but I love the honesty, and I know that this interview is going to be very genuine and transparent too. So, listeners, as you know, I love to dig into people's stories. So, as with many of the people I've interviewed in the past, to hear that Alex spends his life coaching individuals and couples on creating deeper intimacy in their relationship and having phenomenal, mind-blowing sex, you might say, well, that wasn't a college major. How the hell did he get there? So that's what we're going to dig into. And so Alex and I just spoke a little bit before the call, and he let me know that his journey began in college, and it was a shorter college time than most would have. So Alex, can you start us off at that point in your story?
Well, first of all, there is a college major out there.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, there is, but it's only at one school. One of the University of California schools has a degree in something they call somatic sexological body work. Right? Yeah, it's like a thing that's somewhere between learning a lot about sex and masturbation and human sexuality and massage therapy. And if you get this degree, you can be licensed in the state of California to legally accept money in exchange for hands-on sex coaching, in a bedroom with other humans. Well, so it's a good piece of trivia. I didn't throw that out. I do not have that degree, but I know people that do.
And Alex, you just increased, whatever university it is going to be getting a huge bump in admissions as soon as people start finding out about this, because oh, you get paid for that? Okay, yeah, I found my major. I found my calling in life.
Yeah, it's a pretty weird program, to be honest, but it's the people who come through it are super knowledgeable, and anyway, so there's that. If my journey on this began in college, it was simply that in college I was immensely sexually insecure. Mm-hmm. That would be the beginning of my journey, I guess. Mm-hmm. As we talked about, I dropped out of college. Beginning of my sophomore year, I was kicked out of college actually for disciplinary reasons. And I won't elaborate, but I was removed. But the thing is, when I was in college, I really I had a lot of insecurities around my masculinity and around, I wasn't a good athlete. And, by many of the measures that I kind of self-assessed my masculinity, I was kind of failing. But I didn't let on, I talked a good game. I think if people were to meet me and talk to me, or talk to some of my friends, they would have said, Alex is pretty normal dude as far as that goes. I had some girlfriends here and there, all seemed kind of normal, mm-hmm. But I had this actually really deep, crazy insecurity that was private and mine alone, and this shame that I wasn't man enough, and I really felt like. If I got really good at sex, like, James Bond, then, everybody who sleeps with James Bond wants to come back for more.
Right.
Oh, James, right? There's like this sense that would make me really manly. And so I started, reading all of these books. I went to school in the 80s, long ass time ago, but it was coming right off of the 70s when most of the first really kind of, the modern books on how to have better sex were happening, like The Joy of Sex and all of these books that came out in that 70s sexual revolution where sex was cool and people talked about it and was hey, my wife and I are, expanding our sexual interests, so we were thinking maybe you and your wife would like to join us. It was like that shit was going on in the 70s. And so a lot of these conversations that we have today really spring from that. In fact, in the late 80s, we took a huge step back, when the whole AIDS thing happened, and suddenly like people got afraid of sex, and free love started sounding like a good idea from a past generation, but not anymore. I think we're just returning to a place where we're more open about these conversations, but now we've got, other complications in the mix, like porn.
Yeah. And, I think it's really interesting what you hit on there, because I think the problem that you addressed, or the problem that you felt that you had of not being masculine enough, not being sexually confident enough, that's something that men and women struggle with. But I mean, I can say me personally, I remember, and for parents and relatives listening, this may not be the interview you want to listen, because I'm going to divulge some things, but where I was in high school and I was still a virgin, and you're in the football locker room and these guys are walking around talking big shit like, oh yeah, I've had sex with 20. And of course they were lying, but you didn't realize at the point, and you felt insecure and inadequate as a man. And so then you get it ingrained in your psychology that you need to have sex with as many girls as possible in order to be worthy or to be cool or to be good. And then when you actually do those things and you start to, people would say, get your number up, you start to have this emptiness, or this, it feels good in the moment and it's great, but then there's this lacking that you constantly notice. So it's something that definitely resonates with me, and I'm sure many of the audience members it will as well.
Yeah, I think, that is a big point. I'm glad that you're unearthing that, and that you're aware of that, even I'm going to say at your age, because it really is something that I didn't figure out until my, much later 30s, which is that what I was feeling was what everybody feels. And I had no sense of that commonality at all. I really thought I was alone. And this exploration of sexual shame and sexual identity shame, this sense of, do I feel masculine, do I feel feminine as a woman, are my desires good and healthy, or are they bad and wrong, or are they both? Like, these things that we feel very alone in turn out to be very universal. I just actually finished doing a live program called How to Man, and it is basically a program about how to step into your fully masculine identities, to step into your manhood. And I built this program exactly because I realized that there's this common thread amongst men of not feeling like men, right. of feeling like we're faking it, of feeling like we're still little boys. Like, how do we know when, today I'm a man, and right. really step into this idea of being in the brotherhood of, at the table of elders, at the table of, the council of warriors. Like, how do we know that we've reached that?
Yeah, when do you get your degree? Yep, I passed man college, and now I grow my beard and I drink my coffee and I'm a man. It's, right, well, and I think it's so, I think it's so true what you're saying, but I also think that this goes far beyond sex. The feelings that we all have inside that we're afraid to talk about, but that turn out to be universal. And it's only through really kind of doing what you do, which is why I love what you do, is bringing it up, being vulnerable, being real, and let's talk about these issues, because then that's the only way to really address it. We can push things away and bury them down, be like, oh yeah, I'm a stud, but inside you feel so insecure and scared. And it's only by bringing it up that this stuff becomes real. So you said you got kicked out of college, and at that point, and you said there was a lot of sexual insecurity. So what kind of spurred the journey and the movement towards studying and really learning about sex to grow in that area?
Well, it's funny. I think everybody is super interested in sex, but very few people read books on sex.
Yes.
Which is weird when you think about it.
Yeah.
Very few people read books on how to be better in bed.
I think there's a stigma around it. I think it's one of those things where
around that same mentality we were talking about, where if I'm reading about it, that means I'm not good at it. So, I don't need a book, I'm awesome. But in the back of your head, you're like, man, I'd really love to pick that up. I think it's just the fear of being judged for reading that.
Yeah, man, that's a great point. I'll tell you, when I first started reading these books, I felt enormous shame around reading them, and for sure was hiding that. I mean, that was definitely a secret. And there's no way, if somebody discovered these books that I was reading and hoarding, that would have been much worse to me than if they had found, my porn stash. That would have been really humiliating, right? Oh, you need to read a book to learn how to fuck, right?
Yeah, like some girl, you're talking to some girl.
That would have been bad. But, some of these books were great, some of them weren't so great, and I began to develop competence, and competence breeds confidence, and then went through, my own life series of journeys that shaped my own ideas around sex, which became just a really central interest of mine. And, I never took any formal classes in it. I just kept studying and keeping this dialogue open. And I was that guy who just brought up sex in every conversation. It was just, that's, if I was in a group of people, it didn't matter if it was men, women, or a mixed group, I would generally find that we were talking about sex pretty soon. It's just, it's a good topic, it's juicy, and everybody kind of gets a little, a little extra engaged when the topic of sex comes up.
Yeah.
So, it was pretty common for me to talk to a woman and say, what was the best sexual experience you ever had, and what made it so great? It was the kind of thing I just used to say. And I think I began to develop kind of a body of information that nobody else seemed to have. And I started designing my own theories and this kind of thing. At some point, I was a freelance writer and a bartender for a good many years before my career took off.
And what type of writing were you doing in the freelance? Was it just whatever came your way, or was it a specific niche?
Yeah, I was, unsuccessfully writing novels and screenplays. I mean, I really, really wanted to be, a writer.
Yep.
And taken seriously as a writer. My dad was in book publishing, but writing a book is a time-consuming thing, so I was putting a lot of effort on writing screenplays, and I flew out to Hollywood, and I got an agent, and just went down that whole crazy Hollywood road. Had a ton of near misses where I had big agents and we were negotiating with studios, but one thing and another, every deal kept falling through.
Right.
And I got to the place where I was 39 and still bartending. It was just clearly time for me to throw up my hands and give this shit up. And right around that time, I was writing some freelance articles, whatever I could get my hands on, and I had written some articles for a website that was a website all around, the single lifestyle.
Okay.
And, what's fun about being single. And so I wrote a bunch of articles, and they asked me to write 10 articles. I think 6 of them turned out to be about sex, because that's kind of was the center ring of what I was interested in.
Right.
And the guy who owned the website, who hired me, called me up and he said, we got the most insane response from those articles you wrote about sex. I've just never seen anything like that. I think you're articulating things about sex, talking about sex the way that I haven't seen before. And this is what I do. All I do is write about, how to pick up chicks and sex and all this kind of stuff. And he said, I think you're really on something there. I think you should write a book about this. And that's what I did. And that was the beginning of my brand, Revolutionary Sex. Now it's a big company now. It's a whole thing. Weird that I didn't stumble into it until 39. I mean, I was really just, doing spare shifts as a bartender, basically running around trying to create something in my life for all those years before this happened.
And I think there's a great message in that, because I saw a quote once that said, maybe you should find a way to make your to make a career out of what you do in your free time. And so it sounds like in your free time, this was just a really genuine, deep interest and a passion of yours to learn about sex, connection, the psychology behind it. And then and although it took some time, you finally found it, that this was the thing that you were meant to do and meant to help people with. Because God knows it's an area where a lot of people need a lot of different types of help. So for all the listeners, keep that in mind, that when you get that genuine spark of inspiration, and when there's that growing desire inside of you to do something or continue to seek out more information on a topic, use that as a trigger and a cue, because that may be the thing you should be spending your time on and that you will love to spend your time on.
Amen.
So you publish your first book, and I'm in the final edit of my book, so I can relate when it comes to the process and the challenges that come along. I'll just ask a quick question about the book. What did you find to be the most challenging process of creating your first book?
Well, I was a writer, so writing was something that I was kind of accustomed to doing. Mm-hmm. It didn't scare me to do any writing, but traditionally, there's a good lesson coming right here.
Buckle up.
Little spoiler, good lesson. To me, a book was something that took a year to write, and 120-page screenplay was something that would take me sometimes a year to write, or certainly 6 months. And this guy who ran this website is kind of a well-known marketing genius. He actually owns a lot of websites, not just this one. He's sort of a well-known marketing guru, Eben Pagan.
Yeah.
And he and I had become very good friends, and he said to me, "Listen, man, I'll help you market this thing, but I got to know you're serious, so I'm going to give you a deadline. You have to get your book written in 30 days.
Wow.
And I said, "Well, a book can't be written in 30 days. And he was like, "Bullshit." He's like, "Write in 30 days or, I'm not going to have anything to do with you. Like, it's that simple. We can either remain friends or not. It's up to you. Get this fucking thing done in 30 days. And so I wrote the book in 29 days. And that was the big distinction. I mean, that was what the huge hurdle for me was. I didn't believe that could be done.
Right.
And until I did it, and it turned out to be, of course you can write a book in 30 days. Of course you can. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know that. And the big learning is Parkinson's law, which is what I learned from Eben. And Parkinson's law is the law that states that it's a business theory that states that a task will expand to take as long as the time given to complete it.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So it's like a management theory. So if you have a team of people and you say, "Listen, I need you to get this project done, you have until next Friday," that's how long it's going to take. But if you say you have until later this afternoon, that's how long it's going to take. And if you say, "I need it by February," that's how long it's going to take.
Right.
And it'll just expand. They'll be busy.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be busy. This thing will kind of expand to fill the deadline, and in the same way, if you set yourself a tight deadline, you'd be amazed at what you can accomplish.
Yeah, I was first introduced to that law in Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Work Week, and it really resonated with me. And he talks about how when you come up on vacation, suddenly, it's that day before you're leaving for vacation and you need to get 6 things done. And normally, maybe you get 1 thing done a day, but somehow you knock out 6 in a day and you're just blown away.
Isn't that remarkable?
Yeah, it's amazing. And because 1, you have incentive, you have drive, but 2, you're saying, I need to get this done, I've got this time. You allocate your time more effectively, you work more efficiently. And for the listeners, I think what Alex just hit on is a massive point that expands far beyond business and book writing. I mean, that is a life lesson, because what that is all about is the stories that you have in your life and the stories in your mind. Because through your life, through your experience, through the people you've met, you've been taught and told stories about how things work, how things go, and how long things take. And if you accept that reality, that's what you're going to have. You're going to have a pretty generic experience where you take as long as other people, and people say it's too hard to travel, so you won't travel. But if you use the advice that Alex is giving and say, you know what, maybe I can learn a language in 3 months. Maybe I can write a book in 30 days. Who says it has to take 10 years to get a business up and running. It's the people who choose to accept that reality of why not, or how can I make this happen, that do incredible, wonderful things and live a life of their dreams. So Alex, I love that lesson, man.
Yeah, man, it served me well, no doubt. Though most of the time I try and sweep it under a rug because I'm a lazy bastard.
So I wanted to ask, how old are you now?
I am 49.
49, okay. So it was about 10 years ago when you started the business.
Yep.
So now that you said, I mean, the business has grown tremendously. What I'm curious is, how many people do you have working on this business or working under you in this company?
Three,
okay.
Three, but I'm hiring.
And what are those key roles that they fill for you?
Customer support, personal assistant, and technology, and I'm hiring somebody in marketing.
Great, okay. Because that's another awesome lesson. I think a lot of people think, oh, if you want to have a big, successful company that reaches lots of people and generates lots of profit, you've got to have a full team and a corporation and da-da-da. And I mean, Alex,
I wouldn't dissuade them of that. I mean,
okay.
There's no doubt in my mind that my company would be much bigger if I was, better at hiring management. It's not, I'm a very good writer, and communicating difficult ideas is what I do. And I think I'm a super genius at this area of sex and relationships because I've worked so hard at it for so long. But I'm not a business genius, and I'm working on that. That's kind of my edge. And there's no doubt that if you want to achieve something of great significance in life, you will achieve it through other people. Yeah. And I think that you can keep your team lean and all that stuff, but I think the sooner you get that things happen in collaboration and not all on your own, the sooner you're on the road to some serious success. That's really been my experience of it. And if I had hired more people sooner, there's no doubt that there'd be another zero on the back of my yearly income.
Okay, great. And so, I mean, I love talking about entrepreneurship because, as you know, this podcast, my business, my blog is just starting. So I love getting the insights and about entrepreneurship. So I would say I'd love to know, what was the biggest challenge you faced in maybe starting or growing this business? Because you obviously had the base of knowledge, you had the reputation, the understanding, the ability to connect with people. So what was the biggest challenge you faced in terms of really launching or growing this business?
It still is my biggest challenge, right? I'm the kink in the hose all the time. It is not, it turns out to be unnatural for me to, hand over stuff for other people to do. And it's weird. If you had given me a self-assessment test and you said, how are your leadership skills? I probably would have put you up there at 10. Great leadership skills. But, leadership really requires that you trust other people to get stuff done. And I had a lot of trust issues. It turned out that I'm a crazy micromanager. Just ask any of my girlfriends. I can be a problem, in the kitchen too. And that was a big problem. And just, I'm a freakishly lazy person. And I think that was a problem, learning how to be more productive. Because if you're an entrepreneur, ain't nobody to tell you to get your stuff done. Like, the only person you answer to is you, and I'm a pretty lax boss of myself. So, that's always been a problem for me. I think that's going to remain a central challenge. And, like I said, around all this hiring stuff, I wish I had hired earlier. One of the big benefits people have getting into entrepreneurship now over any time in the past is so much is systemized. I mean, your computer can do so much that used to take lots of employees, and there are all of these. Everything is kind of set in place now. You can just turn the key and walk into. There are companies that have virtual assistants for rent, so you don't even have to hire, if you only need somebody for 3 hours a week, you can just get that, which that didn't exist before. And I've been working with a lot of outsourced companies, which has been great. A lot of my marketing goes through outsourced companies and that kind of stuff. But there's nothing like a dedicated hire when you've got somebody on your team whose full attention is devoted to the success of your business. And the sooner you kind of transition from working with one of these outsourced organizations to getting a real professional in your business, the sooner you see these exponential growth points. You hit those inflection curves where things really start to take off.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something that from my mentors and the people I've been working with, utilizing and leveraging automation, and it was something that you spoke on at the conference, is just using the tools that are available and really leveraging the internet, the new technology, the ever-developing technology, because it limits the amount that you need to be checking and monitoring every little piece. And like you said, when you hire qualified, committed people, they can take a little bit of that burden off you, so you're not feeling like you have to manage every single piece.
Yeah. It's never been an easier time to start your own business. This is like the golden age.
Absolutely.
Not to mention, just like the iPhone. I mean, there's no fucking way I could have ever been successful before the iPhone. The iPhone had to happen before I was 39 before the iPhone came out. No way I could be successful before the iPhone. It just couldn't happen because I'm too lazy and too scatterbrained. But if I can set a bunch of calendar alerts and the thing follows me everywhere, you know what I mean? It's like it's all in one place. It's a game changer.
Yeah, and I totally agree, because that technology, although it can be a bad thing and we can overdo technology, it can be such a powerful tool when we leverage it correctly. And for the listeners, in terms of starting a business, Alex is absolutely right. I was able to technically start a business in about a day. You go on LegalZoom, you file the paperwork, setting up a blog takes maybe an hour, if that, and then getting a podcast up and running. It took me longer, but if you knew what you were doing, or if you want my help, I can help out. But that could take an hour as well. I mean, within 4 hours, you could have a business and a podcast all set to go. So it's absolutely true. But Alex, so now we've kind of run through your story quickly, and I'm glad, because I really want to dig into sex more. And I think having you on this show is something that a lot of my listeners, and myself included, are extremely interested to find out certain questions. And I think it'll be great because you and I can talk about these things that people are afraid to talk about. And I'll do my best to be honest, be vulnerable, and be open about these things, because, again, it's not the conversations most people are going to have. So what I'd like to start off asking you is, what do you think is the biggest misconception that men have when it comes to dating and sex?
Biggest misconception that men have, whether they admit it or not, is the deep underlying belief that to get sex is transactional. That they're going to have to give something to get something.
Okay.
And it really comes off a deeper piece of psychology, which is that we all have this meta program that we think we're unworthy, and everybody's wired for this, and that's its own rabbit hole. Maybe we'll dig into that, maybe we won't. But just for now, trust me that I've never met a human, no matter how confident or how much swagger or how rich or how handsome or beautiful or whatever, that wasn't wired with the basic I'm secretly not worthy, and people are going to figure that out about me someday. And so we hear as men that women like sex as much as we do, and we have some difficulty wrapping our brains around that because we're trying really hard to get sex, and they say no, and why we would never say no. So clearly they must not like it as much as we do. Mm-hmm. And it turns out, of course, they do. They like it just as much or more, but they have other considerations layered upon it. Some of them that have been just layered into the workings of their brain by evolution, because the human brain hasn't caught up with the birth control pill. So, women are psychologically wired to view sex as a very high stakes game, because much as they love it, and much as it's pleasurable, their body tells them that they could end up getting pregnant, even if they're on the pill and they can't.
Right.
So that body wisdom says, I gotta be careful with this, and sets up various barriers. And sometimes those barriers get badly broken and they become a mess. And And frankly, and again, just another whole conversation that we may or may not get to, but internet porn and the incredible ubiquitous availability, just the everywhereness of super graphic, like off the charts pornography is doing insane damage to human brains.
Okay.
And for people like, for your audience, for people, recently graduated in their 20s who grew up on porn, it's just a wrecking ball for your sex life. And I know that some people, have gotten away unscathed, but many, many others are really, like, their sex lives are badly broken from it. And so we may get into that, but the big misconception that men have then is like that I need to do something in order to get sex. Mm-hmm. And it's just not the case at all. So the kind of baseline thing is I need to convince her that I'm a good guy, a nice guy, and a good choice as somebody you want to mate with, mm-hmm. right? And we've got some wiring around that, right? The machine is kind of preloaded with these ideas because there is this, evolutionary sense of that. And so we do shit to try and impress her, and that could be, wear the right clothing or drive a Porsche or, try and get a cool job or, take steroids and get big muscles, mm-hmm. or, whatever that thing is. And it could be transactional, as in I'm going to buy you dinner, I'm going to buy you flowers, I'm going to buy you this, I'm going to, whatever you want, and I'm going to make that happen, and compliment you and tell you how beautiful you are. Mm-hmm. Or it could be that we read a bunch of pickup artist stuff, and we're like, oh, complimenting would be the worst thing I could do because what I need to do is prove to her I have higher social status by ignoring her or negging her or using body language that tells her I don't give a fuck and all this kind of stuff. But even that's transactional, right? You're trying to pay the price to get to the pussy.
Right.
And as long as you're in the transactional mindset, the whole thing is kind of fucked. Like, you can never really have a great relationship or great sex as long as you're in the transactional mindset.
And so what would you, and it's funny, you've hit on like multiple things that I wanted to cover, so I think we'll hit porn next, because that was one of my next questions. But what do you think is the way to overcome the transactional mindset? Like, what is the mindset that you found to be most effective in helping people have healthy, wonderful, amazing sexual relationships?
It's the us-we trend, mindset, right? I mean, it's got to be replaced with something. You can't just say, well, I'm not going to think that anymore.
Right.
And it's going to be somewhat persistent. You have to, the first thing to get over the transactional mindset is to notice it. Like the guy who walks up to the woman and says, wow, you're so beautiful, and I saw you standing over there, and I thought, gee, I just need to get to know her because she's just so lovely. He feels like he's just being authentic, but in fact, he's being very studiously clever. He's like trying to say something that he thinks will impress her into having a conversation with her.
Oh, okay.
Like there's a transaction happening. But he needs to notice it, and when you begin to notice it, when you begin to see that you're revising your behavior around the woman that you're sexually interested in relative to your behavior around everyone else, I think that's easy to notice. But then you'll notice that this is a transaction. You're thinking there's a price I'm going to need to pay. There's a barrier to entry between me and being in sexual romantic relationship with this other person, and that's that's like you have to, if you want the cup of Starbucks coffee, you've got to give them the $2. Like, there's a transaction.
Right.
They won't just give it to you for free. But sex is not like that at all, right? It really is not a transaction, or doesn't need to be and shouldn't be, right? There's a way to do this without the transaction. The first thing is you notice it. You notice, oh shit, I'm doing that. Mm-hmm. Right? It's easy to notice, but notice it. And then when you notice it, begin to laugh at it.
Yeah.
That's the next thing. And it's critical that you laugh at it, because the alternative is to go, oh fuck, I'm doing it again. Fuck, I'm doing it again. And then what happens is your self-critical voice takes over, and then things just get worse. They spiral relentlessly downhill from there. So when you notice it, you have to just laugh. You go, oh, I'm doing that human thing. That's what humans do. I'm doing the human thing. I'm just being normal. I'm doing the normal human thing. Notice it and laugh about it. That's step 2. And then step 3 is what do you do instead, which is the us. You realize that she's in the same thing. She's like blow drying her hair a certain way and putting on the makeup and wearing the fashionable clothing and, you know, potentially even buying a bag of like plastic and saline and having it surgically placed into her body in order to look a certain way, because that's the barrier to entry to meeting a good guy. She's transactional too. Like, this is a human thing. When you get that, and you get that we're all humans, you can begin to approach her as the, oh yeah, right, we're in exactly the same fucking place. Like, hey, hi, you know, I'm Alex. I'm
Right.
Brian. You know, and just really get that you are really in a shared human experience right now, and you're gonna have to navigate some uncomfortable, weird shit, and that you can laugh at it.
I think it's so funny because as you were saying, like, you got to laugh at yourself, I was like quietly laughing to myself because I was like, oh my God, I've done that. Like, I've done that plenty of times. And part of me in this overcoming graduation journey is working to be more authentic and more real. And like you said, you know, walking up to a girl and just being that, wow, I really wanted to talk to you, or wow, it's like, I'll be honest, I've thought about doing that more because, you know, you get nervous, you get scared for whatever reason. But the whole concept you said of recognizing that you're not just treating this like any other interaction with any other human being and valuing them the same. It's not because, like you said, in the back of your mind, you're going, maybe sex if I say the right thing and wear the right clothes and do the right this. And so it's hugely powerful to have that recognition. I totally agree with you. I think awareness in anything is the most important key, because then you can work to modify. And I loved what you said in one of your speeches that I watched prior to the interview. You talked about that there's this kind of central misunderstanding that we think that men and women want completely different things from sex, but in reality, they're looking for the same thing. So could you talk a little bit to that portion of your speech and of your message?
Yeah, I think, you know, there's this misconception that women want, you know, romance and connection, and men just, you know, want sex, they want pussy, they want, you know, just conquest. And listen, to some degree, you know, we all want all of these things. You know, women want conquest too. Like, they, you know, to a woman, conquest might be, you know, the guy who all the other women want for whatever reason, you know, because he's the most handsome or the most powerful, or he's the boss or the leader of the tribe, right? And for a man, it might be, you know, certain other sexual characteristics, youth, beauty, that kind of thing.
Right.
But, you know, it's that whole mating status game. And so, you know, there is something to prove there for men and for women. And that's, you know, that's in there. But it's by no means the primary driver for men or for women. But it's like allegedly the primary driver for men. But I've done some pretty deep studying on this, and I've worked with so many men now, and so many men, both single and who are in couples. And it turns out that, you know, men really do want things that are similar to women, but it's difficult for them to articulate it that way. What I found was that both men and women really wanted, more than anything else, things like being accepted for who they are. Like, really being accepted for who they are. That was like a big deal for everyone. Like, I don't want to have to put on an act with her. I want her to, like, actually just dig me for me. Which is funny because we all put on acts because we assume that we're not going to get that.
Right.
Yeah, and of course, you know, that's what women want too. And, you know, people really all want a lover who's a good receiver. You know, we all think we need to be good in bed, right? I mean, my whole journey in this started because I wanted to learn how to be good in bed. I wanted to be impressive. I wanted to, you know, give a woman, you know, life-shaking orgasms that made her go, wow, that was the greatest sex I've ever had.
Right.
And nothing's changed. I still want to do that, right? and I teach men to do that. But it turns out that if you really want to be great in bed, the easy button is to let them do that for you. Like, that's the way, you know, all humans want to feel that feeling that they were great in bed. And it's pretty easy, relatively, to give that experience to them. You really want a woman to think you were great in bed, make her feel like she was great in bed. You know what I mean? Be a good receiver. And, you know, that's probably the easiest and most pleasurable sex tip you'll ever receive, is, just to learn how to be, it's like when you, imagine if you got a present that you bought for your nephew, assuming you have a nephew, pretend you have a nephew, and you buy a Kwanzaa present or a whatever, Hanukkah, Christmas, Ramadan present, whatever, right? So you bought a holiday gift for your nephew, and you give the kid the gift, and he unwraps the paper and he opens it up and he goes, "Oh yeah, I've already got one of these." That doesn't feel super good, right? Mm-hmm. But if you give him the thing and he unwraps, he opens it up, he's like, "Oh my God, Uncle Brian, holy shit, how'd you do? Mom, look, oh my God, and he runs over and grabs you by the leg, starts hugging your leg. You're the best uncle. Right? That's like the best feeling. Nobody's going to give you a gift. Nobody's going to give you a gift that's going to feel as good as you having given that gift. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's nothing better than being received that way. And so, like, if you could take that into the bedroom and be like an enthusiastic receiver of what your lover is doing to you, that's like you're the best person I've ever been in bed with. I've never had sex. It was so much fun for me because you were a good receiver. It's bigger than giving orgasms. It's bigger, but guys don't get that. They don't get that at all, and women don't get that.
Yeah, so it's very true. And it's funny because when you're talking about this and you're talking about the various things that are affecting our mentalities and our ideas, I want to come back to the porn topic now because I believe that's a big influencer. Because like you said, pretty much from the age that I figured out that, wow, okay, girls are pretty awesome. They stopped having cooties and started being hot. Porn was available. And so as a young guy, you're like, I like girls. I kind of want to see them naked. And all you had to do was click on a website. But to your point, there's really graphic, really horrible, really just crazy shit out there. You always had that one friend that was like, "Hey dude, you got to see this video," and you're like, "Dear God, like why would anyone want to see that?" And I think it's so interesting because as a guy, I mean honestly, it's like, yeah, I watch porn pretty frequently, and you'll hear all varying stories from guys and girls, and I think girls have some fear around it because, again, there's a stigma. Guys can watch it, it's no big deal. Every guy watches it, but if a girl watches porn, some people react differently, when in reality, I would say a lot more people are doing it than are admitting to it. But for me, and I want to get your input on this, on like what are the harmful effects, because for me, I'll say that I've seen, I think it creates kind of a perception that, one, everyone is having sex all the time. And if you're not, you suck or you're inadequate. So, you're seeing all these scenarios and these fantasies of people having sex at work and just in the street and all kinds of things. And you're like, geez, these people are getting it everywhere and I haven't had sex in months. What's wrong with me? But then on another point or on another level, it creates kind of unrealistic expectations of what people want from sex, because there's maybe an aspect of violence or domination or just kind of these multi-person relationships, all kinds of things. So what do you think are the most kind of destructive effects from, oh, by the way, so just a quick pause, there's a train that comes by, because I live right next to the train tracks. So on just about every episode, I get the train coming by at least one time. So I use that, she's a character on the show, her name is Donna, and I use Donna to promote whoever I'm interviewing. So at this time, guys, if you're loving this interview and you want to find out more about Alex and all his amazing stuff, please visit revolutionarysex.com. You can also check out his YouTube channel by searching Alex Allman. That's Alex spelled normally, Allman. So thank you, Donna, for your promotion, and she said you're welcome. So, all right.
That's fantastic. Thank you.
So, I figured, I was like, it's going to be a part of every show. So rather than freak out and make it a big deal and have to edit every part out, I was like, I'll just make her a character. So, back to porn.
Back to porn.
Yeah.
So, yes and yes on the two things that you mentioned. What's most harmful? Oh man, I guess what's probably most harmful, if I was going to go for the number one, is the sexual dysfunction that it brings for men. So many men who are porn addicted, and it's I guess that's another thing that's worth mentioning. It's addictive. It's super fucking addictive. It's crazy addictive. And like anything that's addictive, not everybody gets addicted. Some people, drink no problem, and some people can't drink, or they can't stop.
Right.
And porn's the same way, but I think porn has a much higher addiction potential than alcohol by a long, long way. We know screens in general are addictive. I'm pretty screen addicted. Most of the people I know are screen addicted. Like, it's really hard to be left alone for more than 60 seconds and not pull out your iPhone
right.
and have to look at a screen, Or like, I noticed like my wife, was like, oh, I'll be right back. I'm going into the bathroom for a minute. I'll whip out my phone and
right.
start looking at the screen.
Right.
It's clearly addictive. It's like it fills up all our excess space. First thing in the morning, people look at them, and that can be television, video games, computer, Facebook, and of course, porn. And porn has a particularly powerful addictive potential because it releases dopamine,
Right.
And dopamine is the same stuff that's responsible for causing addictions in, cocaine and heroin and all those other things that we think of as like things of super high addiction potential. It's free, it's easy access. It's kind of the perfect storm for habituation.
Right.
And so, one of the things that we'd have to just say, one of the great dangers of porn, we'd have to list its addictive potential. And like anything that's addictive, one of the problems with it is, what is it taking you away from? Like how many hours are you spending watching porn when you could be hanging out with friends, with your girlfriend, or finding a girlfriend?
Yeah, I was going to say
socializing and dating.
Yeah, going on a real date.
Yeah. How much time do you spend looking at porn when you could be, studying for school, or furthering your self-education, or volunteering in your community and doing something good for other humans, or doing your work that gets you paid, or working on, improving what you do so that you can get paid more, or, hanging out with friends, real friends, and, just drinking a beer and, getting human contact. Like, what is the expense you're paying for the time you spend with porn? I'm not talking to everybody right now as I say this, but I know that for, a lot of the guys listening, there's a lot of women listening to this is resonating. You're going, oh, fuck, yeah, I if I start watching porn, I'm still there 5 hours later. And that's not uncommon at all. People can lose a weekend to porn the way they can lose a weekend to binge drinking. So we gotta look at that. But like I said, the most damaging thing is that particularly guys who become addicted to porn, they do, through a process called neuroplasticity, they actually damage their brains. They're actually make neurological changes to their brains that make it impossible for them to have normal sex.
Wow.
And that's got to be number one in my book. And I'm sure that we're going to see this analog in women too, because a lot of women are addicted to porn. But I don't have a ton of data on that yet, but I have like piles of data starting right back when I first wrote my book. I started getting emails from men just at the very beginning saying, I can't get it up with my girlfriend. If I do get it up and we start having sex, and then within just a minute or so, I go soft. Or I'll take a bunch of Viagra and I'll get hard, but there's no way I can reach orgasm. There's no way I can ejaculate with my girlfriend. I can only do it by masturbating with porn.
Wow.
Now, that does not exist among men in my age group. It doesn't exist. Did not ever exist for us.
Right.
This is a new thing, and it is everywhere. I talk to men every single day in their 20s and 30s who have perfectly normal testosterone levels, despite all the bullshit out there around that. Perfectly normal testosterone levels, who can't get an erection with a real woman. Men who've been married, men who've had long-term girlfriends, men who've been with more than a dozen women have never once had sex without Viagra. I'm talking about guys like, who are 28.
Wow.
And that didn't exist for my generation. It just didn't exist, and it's the porn. It actually is doing real neurological damage, actually changing the physiology of the brain. And just to, I don't know how deeply you want me to go into this, but the way neuroplasticity works is your neurology, your brain will actually change its physical structure based on focus, time, and intensity. So the more time you spend doing something, the more intensely you do it, the more it creates neurological change. Now, this is why an Olympic skater, if they focus with enough intensity over and over and over again through lots of repetition, they can do shit that is impossible for the average person. They can, not only can they do it, but eventually they can do it effortlessly. Wow. It actually just becomes part of them, like as easily as you can, drive your car. It becomes effortless for them because they've done neurological changes, beneficial ones in their case.
Right.
But when you watch porn over and over again, you get the same repetition. The focus and intensity is built in because of our human instinct for sex, because it's such a powerful impulse for us.
See, it's fascinating what you're talking about because, guys, like I said, I'm going to be very honest on this interview. There have been times where I've lost a weekend or, a day or two to porn. And,
Me too.
And even when I was young, really too young to be watching porn because I could do it. There's nobody home. You're like, hey, why not? And the thing is, you get kind of, to Alex's point, you get lost in it. You're just like, and because you're getting that dopamine release every time you enjoy the videos, I'll say, to say it in a tasteful way, you're getting the dopamine release, and then you relax, and as a guy, you're just kind of like, oh, let me just chill out for a bit, and then you're like, I'll watch some more, and it's like, just think of all the time that I lost. And I've never heard it framed that way, and think of the time you're losing, feeding this addiction, essentially, and all the events that I could have gone to, the people I could have met, the insecurity I could have gotten over, because a lot of that, you're just saying like, oh, one day I'll do that, or yeah, that's what I'd be doing if I was there, but it's like, but you're sitting in your room alone. And you could be just getting over that fear of approaching a girl, of talking to someone new, of asking out that girl in class. But especially in college, I would say it was a pretty frequent, maybe porn, maybe once a day, if I'm going to be honest. And maybe more, because I was so focused on sex and meeting girls that it was just constantly wired into me that I was like, all right, if I'm not having sex, I want to be watching sex and watching girls naked. And it's like, it's amazing that the whole concept of neuroplasticity you're discussing, I'd never really heard this before, but it's making a lot of sense. And I also, the detrimental effects just from the psychological standpoint, but like you said, the actual neurological damage is pretty amazing. And one of the points I wanted to touch on, which I wanted to ask the questions that I think everybody has, but no one wants to ask. So one of the biggest fears, and for guys and girls out there, guys, I think you're going to relate, girls, this may be a surprise, or you might have already known this, but one of the biggest fears or the biggest doubts in a man's mind is, what if it's not big enough? The whole size question for a girl. It's, do girls always want it bigger? Is size and width the most important thing in the bedroom? And I think even guys who are, I don't know, comfortably endowed, let's say, will watch porn and see these and essentially superhumans with these appendages that are terrifying, and say like, oh, that's what a girl really wants, is something the size of a leg, and that's, if I don't have that, then I can't give her pleasure, or I'll never have good sex, or I'll never have a happy relationship. So can you talk a little bit to that point? Because I actually saw some of the videos you had that talked about size. So can you give the listeners a little background on that whole can of worms?
Yeah, man, I'm going to do a product plug too. I have to.
Oh, please. Dude, absolutely.
It's too good.
Absolutely.
Too good. Yeah. So listen, I did some really deep work into this with so many men that I ended up creating a program called Unleash the Beast. And if there's a guy listening to this right now who, by the time we get through with this little piece, is like, Yeah. That's all true. But I still, drives me crazy that I have a small penis. Then you need to go get this program, Unleash the Beast, on my website over at revolutionarysex.com, because it's a real game changer for men. It started out basically where a friend of mine, a female friend, called me up, and she confided in me that she was unsatisfied with sex because her husband was too small. Which freaked me out, because I have been selling my book on how to be good in bed for years, saying, hey, size doesn't matter, size doesn't matter, size doesn't matter, size doesn't matter. It's all about, who you are and what you're doing, and
the emotional connection.
And here's this female friend of mine calling me up, just saying, my husband's too small, and I had this ex-boyfriend who was huge, and I miss it, and what do I do?
Wow.
So the program really started with this kind of idea of creating sex positions to make it feel bigger in bed. So that was kind of the genesis of it. But that took me down the deepest crazy rabbit hole into this whole size thing, and the multi-billion-dollar industry of fake pills and fake exercises, and this whole thing with like the stretching exercises and the pills. Just it is 100% bullshit. Don't waste your money on that. Interestingly, by the way, in every scientific study ever done, and if you ask any dick doctor, any urologist, right, a real dick doctor, right, somebody who's a urologist that specializes in, penile implants and fixing penile injuries, they will tell you that the only thing that these stretching exercises are good for is injuring your penis, so that you end up having surgery to repair the shit that you do. So, jelking and all that is nonsense. And every credible doctor will tell you that. And yet, in my research, surveying tens of thousands of my readers, I had men write to me that said that they actually got some results from the stretching exercises. So, anecdotally at least, it's possible to grow your penis by a small amount. But here's the problem with it. Here's what you got to know. It's insanely time-consuming. It's extremely dangerous. Like, you could end up, having some really spooky surgeries on your cock. Yeah, for real. But also, it's not going to do you any good, because if you have what a psychologist will call body dysmorphia, in other words, I think my penis is too small. It's just like an anorexic woman saying, who weighs 90 pounds saying, oh, I'm too fat. There's no way this stretching exercise is going to make you feel better about it, because you might put on a 1/4 inch, but if you were insecure because you were, 5 inches, now you're 5 1/4, you're not going to feel any fucking better about that.
Right.
You will have spent months doing something very dangerous with literally no result in your life. So here's the reality. The reality is the vast majority of women don't care at all. The vast majority of women don't care at all. Some women do care. Some women have a fetish for big cocks, the way some men have a fetish for feet. Right? It's out there.
Yep.
It's much less like, there are men who have a fetish for giant breasts. Like huge, like crazy mutant breasts. There are men who are into that. But there's more men that are into that than there are women that are into big dick. That's the reality. So it's pretty unusual. Now, with all that said, the next level of muddiness on that is that many women have some preference for a slightly larger penis. And so that immediately sends men into like, many women prefer it, I don't have it. Many women prefer it, I don't have it. But here's the thing. You have to put it in the context of other things that they prefer. And again, it's somewhere around the way men feel about attractive feet. It's like, if a girl has very pretty feet, that's nice. But if a girl has ugly feet, but she's got a great everything else, chances are you're not going to give a shit. And that's the way it really does land for women. Like, because it was weird. I did this survey saying, do you care about dick size? And all the women said no. And then I asked another way, like, all things being equal, if you have a slightly larger penis, how do you feel? Many women say, oh, yeah, okay, that would be good. And then you're like, well, what does this really mean? And so I had to put it into context. And I had, again, thousands of my female readers rate all of these different physical characteristics. and emotional characters, things like kindness, empathy, emotional availability, and, things like broad shoulders, pretty eyes, a nice smile, skinny waist, whatever, like all these different qualities. And big dick comes in super low. I mean, super low. It's at the very bottom of the physical qualities, and the physical qualities are all below the emotional qualities. And of the physical qualities, number one was a good smile. Now that's interesting because a good smile is more than a physical quality. It's an indicator of an emotional quality.
That's interesting.
Yeah, right. Yeah, isn't that interesting? So, and a great smile came in way ahead of broad shoulders, and broad shoulders came in, literally hundreds of entries before big penis. So it's not like big cock is nice, I guess. Some women really don't like big cock. Some women really love it, but for most women, it's kind of like a very minor detail. But here's a conflating factor to really mess with you guys. One of the top searches done on Google is to look at pictures of men with big cocks. Who's doing those searches? Men.
Really?
Men are doing those searches.
Really?
Men are obsessed with big cock. Men love big cock. So if you're trying, to do stretching exercises, take pills and stuff, just know that you're not doing it for women, you're doing it for men. But most of these men think of themselves as heterosexual, but they're doing it for other men. They're doing it for themselves because men are the ones who have a fetish for watching a guy with a big cock have sex with a girl.
Wow.
Women are not watching big cock porn. Men are watching big cock porn. And once you get that, it kind of like unglues some of this stuff. But there's much deeper issues here. Early in this interview, I said to you, Brian, that all humans are wired with this "I'm unworthy" thing, and I said maybe we'll talk about it later, maybe we won't. I have enormous proof and research around this. Like humans just don't really believe that they're worthy of love. They sabotage their relationships over it. And we're geniuses at finding evidence for the fact that we're not lovable. We're geniuses at finding evidence for it. We can take all kinds of facts and twist them for meaning that. And so men have really seized upon this one thing of like, my penis isn't big enough, as a reason why women won't like me. Guys say, well, I don't have a good job, that's why women don't like me. I'm bald, that's why women don't like me. I'm fat, that's why women don't like me. I'm short, that's why women don't like me. Oh, my cock's not big enough, women wouldn't like me. It's like we're geniuses at making these excuses for why we won't be liked. All of them are bullshit, but the big cock one's more bullshit than most. Yet it gets more play than most. And that's why I built this program. It's such a powerful process to go through to decouple your sense of masculinity and confidence from dick size, and then reattach your sense of confidence to the truth of your identity. So that you can actually live with sexual confidence. Because not being sexually confident is the problem. The penis size is not the problem. The sexual confidence is the problem, and it's also the solution, and it's what you want. It's the goal.
That's amazing, man. I mean, you've literally blown my mind multiple times in this whole talk, and it's funny. So for any of the listeners who haven't been to a porn website, which, let's be honest, guys, is maybe like one or two of you, you've seen it at least once. Like, these sites are laden with ads. So you're going there and you're like, yeah, I want to see, some naked girls or whatever. And then they're laden with ads about how to grow your dick. Do you want a 12-inch cock? Like, I mean, these ridiculous, like, they have pictures. It's crazy. But subconsciously that's getting at you and saying, okay, that's what girls want. And although I think it's fascinating that you said that guys are looking to see what's out there, because I can say as a guy, I've never done that. I've never Google searched big cocks, but as a guy...
Well, let me tell you that that's unusual.
It's unusual that I haven't.
And a lot of people do searches by name on the actors that they know have the biggest cocks. Are huge searches. And it's like... it feeds into this thing. Like many guys Google like what's the average penis size.
Oh, yeah.
They want to know how they measure up, and they find out that it's between 5.5 and 6 inches, and they pull out a tape measure, and they're like, oh, I'm between 5.5 and 6 inches. If they don't feel any better, because they still have the smallest penis that they've personally ever seen. Because you haven't seen your buddies with a hard on usually. Right? You've only seen them, flaccid in the locker room, whatever. So every erection you've ever seen has been important. It's been like 9, 10 inches long. You're like, well, I have the smallest penis in the world. So no matter how much you read, you have this feelingness of being small. But
right.
But in fact, the vast majority of men, by a logarithmic scale, the vast majority of men actually fall right into the average zone.
And it's really interesting because, like I said, I've never Google searched that specifically, but I will say as a guy, there's maybe this competitive nature in you that's like, I wonder what the competition out there is like. But I mean, I've definitely seen videos where it's like, they're like, this is ridiculously vulnerable, but that's what this is about. You see like girl gets banged with big dick, and you're like, yeah, we'll see. All right, is it big? And then you're just in there, you're watching the girl, but you're also like, whoa, dear God, what is that? Like it's just so interesting that you're saying this stuff, that guys are like so obsessed with it, that like penis envy concept, where we're thinking about it probably, I don't know, 10 times, 100 times more than girls really are.
A million times.
Million times, okay.
Yeah, except, like I said, there are girls that fetishize it. I'm not, it's not that they don't exist, but they're, it's pretty unusual. And again, I think that we are wired to, look at other men and figure out if we were competing for the girl, who would get her.
Right.
So he's got a bigger dick, so he'd get her. But that's bullshit. This is absolute bullshit.
Oh, dude, that is one of the biggest. If a girl leaves you, and especially if she cheats or something, it's like that is one of the first. He must have a bigger dick. That must be the thing, because I think the much harder thing to do is look at yourself and be like, where could I develop or grow to be stronger and more confident? It's much easier to just be like, oh, well, it's got to be that one thing that I have no control over. It's out of my hands. It has nothing to do with me. And dude, this is really fantastic stuff. But you know what? So I feel like the female listeners to this show are getting all kinds of like, oh my God, really? They think this, that? But I think we need to hit on them a little bit. So could you give us a little bit of insight into what is the biggest insecurity or fear that the female population feels when it comes to sex?
Well, women are so loaded up with shame around their bodies, just like men are. For men, it's like the dick thing, and for women, it's, breast size and if they're fat enough or skinny enough or their butt's the right shape. Women have a grave terror over getting naked in front of their boyfriend. And not all women, obviously. And of course, they also face this kind of paradox of, we want them to have sex with us, but then there's still like a lot of slut shaming.
Yeah.
There's so much of that mentality out there. There was that girl at Duke who was doing some porn, and they found out about it as an undergrad, and she was like, basically driven off the campus. And had so much hate directed towards her. So, it's really complicated for women. It's really complicated for women to have to go through all this stuff and to really not understand what it is that men want. I think one of the most complex things for women of, your generation is sourced in this whole pickup artist stuff. There are so many guys out there who are trying to learn how to hack attraction. They're trying to learn cheat codes to there's so much out there that men are being sold, like, just do this,
right,
and she'll be automatically attracted to you, and totally against her will. And some of it works, you see. So what happens is, it superficially works. It's never going to get you an authentic relationship or a real girlfriend, but it might get a girl to give up her phone number. It might even get you a one-night stand. And so for the man, that's bad news, by the way, because it actually has reinforced his own insecurity about his own ability to get women, because it was only when he did this like lying kind of deceptive thing that he was able to get anywhere, which just reinforced his belief that he's no good. So it's bad for him, and it's super bad for women, because there are all these guys like doing all these techniques on them all the time,
right?
Which makes it extraordinarily frustrating. They're very attracted to men. They want to have sex with men. They want to be in a relationship with men, and the men are all showing up with all of this kind of artificial and contrived gamesmanship, which is ultimately, all of it is designed to mimic social status, because social status is sexually attractive. So, you know, high status males are more attracted to women than low status males. So men are like, well, what makes high status? Well, there's a bunch of things that make high status, some of which are things like your real talents, your actual sense of humor. One of the highest status things you can possibly do is to be vulnerable and authentic about who you are. That takes amazing courage. It's incredibly high status. But that's not what these guys teach you. They teach you all these little body language tricks and ways of kind of taking down her self-esteem a peg. You know, like negging and stuff like that, so that she feels this kind of superficial conditional attraction. So women are bombarded with this shit now. There's like not a guy on a college campus that doesn't know a bunch of this stuff. And it's very, very difficult for women to sort out who's having an authentic conversation with them and who's not. And men in general just seem like super fucking weird. You know, they just seem super weird, because they're all like making some kind of play to hack attraction.
Right, using NLP or wearing weird clothes. I read The Game by Neil Strauss, and so I learned about that stuff. And I remember at one point reading, like, there were times I read it and got really frustrated, like, what the hell is, why are they doing this? And then I love the way that Neil wraps it up in the end and said that, like, the deeper he got and the more successful he got, the more disconnected he felt with who he really was. So it's what you said is, I just think, so true, is that when we start relying on a technique or a tactic or a neuro-linguistic programming technique, we're telling ourselves that we aren't good enough at our core and who we are, that if they really knew who we were, they'd never want us. And like you said, these things might get them a one-night stand or might get them a quick relationship or a phone number, and then they're like, hey, dudes, I got her number. But when the true reality comes out, and if you want to actually get to know that person, it won't go any deeper, because they're going to see who you really are. And you need to be able to present that, like you said, in a vulnerable, authentic way. And if you're willing to be open about who you are, you'll meet the people that resonates with and that you're meant to meet. That's what I've always found. And when I contradict that and I try to like put on a cocky, confident game, like go out, it doesn't work out. Even if I did hook up with a girl, she'll see that there's insecurity and there's fear in me and that there's doubt about the world and doubt about life. So, but when I'm real with girls and when I talk to them genuinely, it's amazing, because you don't click with everyone, but that you're not supposed to. You know, sometimes you just meet one girl in a night that you really clicked with, and you're like, wow, I was being myself and she loved it. That's so refreshing. You know, it's an amazing mind game we play on ourselves of like what our self-worth is all about.
Yeah, man. Right on. That's it. And so for women, the real challenge is how to meet a guy who's authentic. And if you are that guy, it's a good way to become a lot more popular. That's for sure. It's very, very challenging for women right now.
And Alex, I also, since after watching one of your videos, I think the concept of social permission that you talked about for females in particular, it goes both ways. Guys and girls encounter this concept of social permission. But could you discuss, because you told that one story about going to the frat house with your girlfriend and her friend, could you kind of give that story and that message again? Because I thought that was extremely interesting of how that was delivered.
Yeah, again, this goes back to this idea of, slut shaming, and that, women are kind of held to this standard in two directions, and it can be very complicated and unnerving for a woman to navigate the world of sexuality and dating. What women generally do, we all kind of know this. This is kind of like a standard thing. the guy is kind of a douchebag, but he's attractive, and she's really certain she never wants to see him again, she's more likely to have sex with him than if the same guy who's, reasonably good looking, she's attracted to him, and he's a really good guy. She's less likely to have sex with him because she wants to see him again, and she doesn't want him to think anything. God forbid he thinks that she likes sex. You know what I mean? Like, wow. It's really hard to be a girl. And they get stuck in this. And what had happened was I was out with my girlfriend at the time, and we were with her best friend, and we went to this fraternity party in their town that they heard was happening, that her friend had been invited to. And we show up at the party, and they're the only two girls there. And there's just all of these drunk guys, and I show up with these two girls, and I'm the only one there with women. And it's immediately this crazy rapey vibe, Yeah. These guys are really drunk and horny, and there's just all the focus in the room is now on, my girlfriend and the friend. Mm-hmm. And so they quickly figure out that my girlfriend's with me, and so they're just like piranha on her friend. And so they're immediately they're like, come on, play this drinking game, and they're kind of cheating. They're ganging up and making it so she's always the one that ends up drinking. Mm-hmm. And they're like, drink, and she's like, drink, and she's drinking, and she's getting drunk. And these guys are getting more and more testosterone crazy. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, this is just every movie you've ever seen about date rape is happening right before my eyes. It's just laying out perfectly along that plot line, which is, I'm sure, exactly what all these guys are thinking. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting really freaked out and worried because I feel like this girl's my responsibility. I arrived with her. She's my girlfriend's best friend. And it's up to me to get her out of there safely. And this is definitely not a safe environment as far as I'm concerned. I'm starting to really freak out because there's a lot of these guys. I'm not that tough. These guys are definitely going to kick my ass. And I'm sure that if I go, hey guys, we're leaving now, good night, she's coming with us, they're going to get in my face over it. Yeah. And so I pull my girlfriend aside. I'm like, babe, we've got a real problem here. And these guys they're trying to get her drunk. And look, she's totally falling for it. I mean, I didn't realize she was so stupid, but she seems to be kind of dumb right now because obviously they're trying to get her drunk and she's still drinking, and I'm not going to be able to get her out of here. You're going to have to somehow talk to them, and I'm not sure if we're going to make it to the door alive. We got to really figure this out. Mm-hmm. And she turned around and she said, you got to be kidding me. Listen, she's twice as smart as any of these guys. She knows what's going on. She's way smarter than they are. And if she's getting drunk right now, it's because she wants to get drunk right now. She knows exactly what's going on. And that's the piece of social permission. She was allowing them to get her drunk so that she would be able to say, oh, I was so drunk last night. And whatever happened, whether she wanted to have sex with one of them, or whether it was just about, fooling around, or just getting that male attention, whatever her design was, being able to say, oh, I was so drunk, you guys got me drunk, was her way of getting social permission for doing what she wanted to do, which was likely get laid. Mm-hmm. She was probably looking to get laid that night. That was so eye-opening for me because I just didn't get that women are actually a lot, and I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with women who said, yes, this guy who she met in the bar was clearly using these pickup artist lines on her because she read the game, Yeah. And she knew he was using the lines, and she pretended to fall for them because that was her social permission. She was looking to get laid. And if he had just walked over and was like, hey, I'm Alex. Yeah, what's going on? I hope I'm not being too forward, but you really turned me on, and I would love to get out of here right now. She would have said yes to that, but whatever, she had to, okay, we got to play this whole fucking game where you've got to do this whole palm reading act on me, and I've got to pretend to be impressed by it. She's not actually impressed by it. She's just like, whatever, you'll do. And I'm horny, and you just by virtue of the fact that you're doing all this douchey stuff, you're probably not going to be my husband, so let's just get this over with. you know?
Yeah, the concept was really interesting for me, and for the listeners, keep in mind, like, Alex is in no way condoning date rape or any of that stuff. Like, he was not saying anything about that. I just want to make that very clear. He was just saying that people will create the situations for them to do the things they want to, and if you think about it, we all use social permission to get away with stuff and then justify it later. Well, I got too drunk, or everybody else was doing it. It's something that, for me, when you said it, when you framed it in that way, it was really interesting because, you know, there have been plenty of times where I was like, I don't want to get drunk or do something stupid, and then I go and take 10 shots with my buddies, and what do you think's going to happen when you take 10 shots? You're going to do something stupid. And so I think that concept is really fascinating, really interesting. But I know we're over time a little bit, but I'd say if we can wrap this up in maybe the next 10 minutes, I think that would be good. Because typically I keep it between an hour, hour and a half. This has been so much fun. This is really, you're like blowing my mind, dude. So many times I've been like, wow, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So one thing I forgot to touch on before, and that was your recommendation for porn. Is it the type of thing where you say just get it out of your life because it's doing way more harm than good, or is it something where you're saying, okay, here and there is okay? Like, what is your recommendation in relation to watching or viewing porn?
Well, you know, standards haven't been created for it, and I would guess that is probably individual. And I don't know for sure, but you probably do, you the listener. You know, you probably know that you need to stop completely or, you know, curtail it. I'll say two things about it relating to alcoholism. You know, there are certainly alcoholics who they just can't have a drink, you know, and they're, you know, if they have one drink, they're, you know, 2 months later, behind a dumpster going, how did I fucking let myself relapse? You know what I mean? And there are other people who just kind of have a drinking problem, you know?
Right.
But, you know, they can have a glass of wine now and then, and it's not that big a deal. And I think that's probably similar to, you know, the way it comes down with porn, that there are probably people who have lesser effects. But as a general rule of thumb, what I've been telling men is, if you watch more porn than you have sex, then chances are you're doing damage. You know, so if you jerk off to porn 7 days a week and you have sex once a month, you're probably harming yourself, and probably, not definitely, probably, you're bad in bed. You're probably sexually dysfunctional. You're learning all the wrong things about how to be good in bed. You know, men think how to be good in bed has to do with, you know, big dick, how long you last, right? And you know, whether or not you can get hard. And, you know, if you just plow away in one position for long enough, she'll have an orgasm. But good sex has nothing to do with that. Well, something to do with it, I guess. You know, I mean, the sex part, right? It does have to happen, right? But I mean, you know, because porn is a totally visual medium where, like, they're arousing you, you're just sitting in a chair passively being aroused, and you don't have to actually do the physical, I'm going to arouse you and we are going to arouse each other. Your ability to get a girl turned on and to, like, lead her through an experience becomes significantly diminished. So if your goal is to be, you know, good at sex and have a great sex life with a real woman in your life or a real man in your life, for women this is no different, I'd lay off porn. So I think as a rule of thumb, have more sex than you watch porn. That just makes sense to me. But for me personally, I am definitely aware that I shouldn't watch porn at all. For me, it's zero. Like, if I watch porn, I'll tend to binge on it, and if I binge on it, I'm aware that my intimacy level with my partner is diminished. So you know, for me, it's avoid it completely. For other men, it could be that they can do it in moderation. Like some, you know, I can drink in moderation, and some men can't. I can drink in moderation, but I don't watch porn anymore, and I recommend not watching. There's another reason not to watch it, by the way. which is every time you watch it, you're just part of the aggregate data that site uses to make money with advertising. They say, look, this is how many people watch, and so that's how much money we're making. You are part of the aggregate data that feeds the money they make, and the money they make is used by, generally a bunch of old guys who really have no moral background whatsoever, who use a lot of money to get impressionable young girls who really didn't learn any better yet to do a bunch of stuff that they will abso-fucking-lutely later regret in life. Mm-hmm. And there's real harm done. I mean, that's the thing, is there's real, the actors and actresses in porn are really being harmed for real. It's super bad for them. You're supporting human trafficking and all kinds of horrible bullshit. So it'd be better not to be part of that. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, can some people use it responsibly? I guess, sure, but you're probably going to have a better life if you cut it out completely. Mm-hmm.
That's it's an interesting point when you consider the bigger scheme and the bigger, I think, me or most guys, you go out, you're like, I'm just gonna look at some pictures, watch a video or something. But when you're thinking about the various people that's impacting, the support that's giving to an industry that unfortunately has a lot of terrible things happening, and that many people, guys and girls, who think they've got nowhere else to turn will go there as a final resort. And I mean, it's an industry that makes insane amounts of money. So it's very interesting to consider that your impact, it's like your vote counts, it's your click counts. And if you're clicking on that site multiple times a week, multiple times a day, you're supporting what could be way worse. So that's a really, really interesting point there.
Yeah. By the way, there's a site called fightthenewdrug.com about porn and porn addiction. And what's the other one called? I can't think of it right now, but there's so much out there around porn addiction. And one of the good things is that your brain is really well wired to correctly procreate. Mm-hmm. Survival and replication is what we were built for. Mm-hmm. The two things that we do is we're really good at avoiding death and making babies. And your brain will absolutely rewire if you're having problems maintaining an erection with a woman and you're under 50, okay, it's the porn. That's what it is. It's the porn. You don't need to go see the endocrinologist or take testosterone supplements. If you're under 50, you're having problems maintaining an erection, it's the porn. Mm-hmm. The good news is, if you stop watching porn for about 2 months, your natural function will return. So, yeah, what can I tell you?
That's, go ahead.
That's the way it is.
And I think that's so critical, because it's like any other thing where people would rather not do the work and get the result. Let me take a pill and get big muscles, let me lose weight, whatever. My brother told me about a guy in college who took Extends, a penis enlargement pill.
Yeah, those guys went to jail.
Did they really?
Yeah. The Extends guys went to jail.
And what for?
It was, for selling fake stuff.
Well, I was gonna say my brother and this guy wasn't shy about it. He had the pills just sitting out on his counter, and so my brother was like, "So, do they work?" And the guy said, "Well, the good news is it worked. It grew, but I can't get hard anymore." So it's when you're putting any of these supplements or chemicals or drugs into your system, it's there's so much more risk when. Your teaching shows people, it's really about understanding your sexual confidence and your self-worth so that you can connect with someone who shares those views and beliefs and values. And so this has been great, Alex. It's funny. A lot of the things I've said on this interview, I'm like, dear God, that's on the recording. But the whole thing. By the way,
I think it might not be the Extends guy that went to jail. It was the Enzyte guys. They had advertised on television, and somebody checked, and it was clearly fraudulent. I think the Extends guys are out of business too. I'm not certain of that, but I'm pretty sure that the FTC put them out of business. It's if you knowingly tell a lie in order to get somebody to spend money, it's legally fraud, and the FBI can only investigate so many of them at a time, but if the companies become big enough, get shut down.
Right.
So, But there's always 10 new guys out there selling the same bullshit.
So for all the guys listening, don't waste your time on the pills. What you need to do is go and buy Alex's course, Unleash the Beast. That's what you need to be doing.
Yeah.
So so Alex, so every one of these interviews I close out with the same question, but I'm trying to think how I can reframe it, because typically what I will ask is if you could go back and give your 21-year-old self, or your, around that 21 to 23-year-old age, if you could go back and give yourself advice, what would that be? But I'm not sure if that would be the same advice you would, if you were talking to me about how to have a sexually healthy relationship and lifestyle, to find real connection and have mind-blowing sex. Would the advice be the same that you would give to me versus your younger self?
Yeah, and it would also be the same general advice I'd give, which is that it would be that everybody is walking around feeling not good enough and unworthy, and thinks that it's like a big secret and that they're hiding it. And that if you can just let that go and have a little bit of a sense of humor around that, and realize that the only thing between you and everything you want is the self-appointment to realize that you're as entitled to it as anyone. It's just self-appointment. It's just what's the difference between being oh, I'm not good enough, and being confident that you are? It's just the decision to be confident that you are. There's actually nothing in the space in between, except for the balls, the courage to step into that reality and say, I am.
That's awesome, man. It's beautiful, and it's amazing, because what's so interesting is that many of the people on this show that I interview talk about that have achieved certain levels of success in their life. They've said that one of the biggest things holding them back has been that value of self-worth, of understanding, am I good enough to be successful in business, to have a lot of money, to be able to travel, to have great sex, to have a great relationship. So it seems like that problem is at the core of so many issues that we face as a society, and we think are things that we're experiencing by ourselves. So I think it's great. I mean, I love the stuff you're doing, man. I love your message and your story. So Alex, I always close out. So where can people come to find come to find out more about you, about what you're doing, and find the amazing products that you're offering?
Revolutionarysex.com or alexallman.life has all my stuff. Facebook /Alex Allman fan, or YouTube /C/Alex Allman are all my channels. And Brian, man, I gotta say the same about you. I'm really super juiced up about what you're doing and the stuff you're up to in life, and I was really eager to get on board when we met last week at Sean's. I remember when we first met, and you were telling me what you did. I was pretty blown away by it. I was impressed. I was like, man, I want to do something this weekend that makes him invite me onto the show because he thinks I'm cool enough. So yeah, man, I'm really impressed with what you're up to as well. So thank you for having me on.
Well, thank you, man. And it's funny because in the same way, I was like, God, I got to ask Alex, man. How can I bring him value? I'd love to have him on the show. He has so many things he could offer, and he's a great message. So it's funny. There you go, guys. There's for the listeners. There's another message. We're both doubting we're both worried, and just have the conversation, talk to people, get out there. So all right, guys. So Alex, if you hang out for a minute, after I finish up the recording, just want to talk to you about a couple things. But for the listeners, this will be the end of today's episode. This is by far my most vulnerable episode for sure, and I learned a ton. So if you want to subscribe to the podcast, you can subscribe on iTunes or on Stitcher to the Overcoming Graduation podcast. If you'd like to join the mailing list or check out a full list of all the episodes and author's bio about me, and find out about upcoming events in the OCG community, you can visit overcominggraduation.com. And as always, you can check out the Overcoming Graduation fan page on Facebook, and you can check us out on Twitter and on Instagram. So guys, that will be it for us today. Thank you all for listening, and go out, start learning about, and start having some phenomenal revolutionary sex in your life.